Let's see. Come around just a little bit. Yeah, we're live. It is 5:30 here 5:30-ish. Tonight we're going to talk about the thumbnail that I have up, and that is a Ford Racing 2-valve supercharger kit. And oddly enough, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, I got every time I've posted the video or post links to it or those kinds of things, I can't believe how many questions I get about the supercharger, and we're going to go over why. It seems odd, but this particular supercharger is an M90 or an M112. It looks like a 112, I think. And what they did was they made one casting that allowed the supercharger rotor pack basically to slide into the casting, and then the casting is the blower casting, and then also, which is also attached to long runners, and then the inlet going into the blower. So it's an interesting deal, and it was well executed, and it worked. The thing is that I don't understand is the popularity of this. And we're going to talk about all the kinds of different things that go along with this particular style of blower kit. This one's, first of all, it's for a 462 valve, which is smart, in my opinion. The guys from Ford Racing making a 2-valve kit is, I think from a marketing standpoint, it's more important or should potentially be more successful than making a 4-valve kit. These are all back in the day. Now that's all Coyote stuff. But the thing is that they sold 1 million or more 2-valves than they sold 4-valves. Now, maybe a case could be made that the 2-valve guys can't afford or couldn't afford this back in the day, and that the 4-valve guys could. Guys buying Cobras had the money to do that. But I think we also saw that lots of guys wanted to modify their 2-valves, and having a blower kit that was easy to bolt on basically was an intake manifold change in this case. So you put the intake manifold on, you reroute the belt, which the pulley was already there. And so it's a fairly simple kit. I remember putting this on back in the day and running it, and it worked fairly well. And this kit, if the comments that I get and the questions that I get and the people wanting to buy the kit are any indication, because I get that a lot, it's a popular kit. It was a popular kit, and it remains to be a popular kit. And I know Ford Racing doesn't offer this anymore. And maybe they're smart, and when sales fall below a certain figure, they just don't reorder it, and they don't offer the kit anymore. I don't have an inside track to what they're thinking, so I don't know. But I can tell you that I get lots and lots of response about this kit, people asking about it. I don't know now that the 2-valve Mustang may be coming up in price now. Before, this blower kit would probably be as much as you could buy a 2-valve Mustang for. I know when I got my 98 back in the day, that a blower kit that's $4,000 or $5,000 is, we bought a whole more than a whole car for that. So there was that issue of having it. The same thing happened to 5-liter Mustangs. They're way up now, but before, when they were $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 cars, and were they going to sell a blower kit that was a $4,000 or $5,000 blower kit to a guy that just bought a car that cost that much? And maybe they weren't going to buy that because they could only afford the car and not the blower also. The interesting thing about this kit, and the things that I wanted to talk about tonight, are the fact that, one, it is a 2-valve one, and they made a lot of those, which I think is a good idea. The other thing that I like about this kit is that it has runner length. I don't think it has as much as like a PI intake manifold, but it certainly has more than like the stuff that was available back in the day, like the Reichert Racing one. I'm thinking comparable to, and I don't remember measuring them, and I don't see any data that I have up in my test notes. I'm thinking, the P51 intake manifold that was available back in the day. I don't know if I don't think that's still around, but it has at least some runner length, not 1 or 2 inches or whatever that we normally see. Because when you see a positive displacement supercharger application, what you see is, the old school way was you put a 671 or an 871 on a lower manifold for a small block Ford or small block Chevy from back in the day. It's just a lower manifold that allows a place for the blower to bolt onto. They didn't really give much concern to what the manifolding was, because it just has short standoffs, basically, sometimes none at all, that just a radius entry going into the head port, sometimes short sections of intake runner length, 1 inch or 2 inches or somewhere in between there, sometimes less than that. And the thing is that it doesn't matter whether it's 1 inch or 2 inch, it's not in a reflected wave length that's going to provide any sort of positive reflected wave tuning to help supercharge the combination, even though it's already supercharged. Runner length does that. Runner length has a cylinder filling effect at given engine speeds based on the RPM and how long it takes for this wave to travel up and back the intake runner length. So it arrives at a certain point and then is effective in a given RPM range. And that's the thing. That's a misconception a lot of people have. Oh, well, it does this, and that intake runner length is only good for doing that at 4,000 RPM. No, it's good at doing that for a big range of RPM. And we see that shift up and down based on a lot of things. But I like the fact that this blower manifold had runner length. The runners went up above the blower. The blower is packaged underneath. It's a good spot on a modular Ford because they had a valley there that was basically covered up. It wasn't open like a small block Ford is. So the block was all sealed there. The only thing that ran underneath there was another tube that ran into there to connect the tubing for the water pump, for the backside of the water pump. And I think that went up to the cylinder head and up to the heater and stuff. I think, if I remember right. But the blower kit just basically bolted on. So you take a PI intake manifold off and bolt this blower kit on. It worked fairly well. The thing that I don't like about this design is that I like the fact that it had runners, and I like the fact that it had a supercharger on it, which that's a good combination. But it did not, because of that design and their positioning of the blower and the runners, it didn't have a place for an intercooler. And I think if I had to choose one or the other between, if we're trying to figure out packaging on something, and and especially on a roots blower, I think I would pick an intercooler over runner length if I had to choose between those two. The ideal situation is to have both of them. But if I had to choose one or the other, I'd rather have an intercooler as part of the packaging than I would have the intake runner length. The intake runner length is good. And I don't know if there's enough there for it to work in the effective RPM range that we're at. Maybe it does. I'd need to measure it. And we need to see. We need to do a back-to-back test to see if the runner length is affecting it in that RPM range. Because if we get rid of the runner length, we know. Or if we just run it NA, we can get an idea too. But I would rather see, especially on a roots blower, I'd rather see an intercooler. So let's see. Let's start our poll. You guys can let me know what you think. Okay, who'd rather have an air-to-water intercooler instead of long runners on a roots blower kit? So we're going to ask our audience. So here's the reason. Here's my reasoning for this. And again, and I talk to people about this all the time when they're asking questions. I'm like, look, the only person that can decide what's best for your combination is you. It's not me. I may have lots of dyno data, but ultimately, like we talk about with camshafts, I can't decide what is the best cam for your combination. I don't have that. And you shouldn't be asking me that. You can ask my opinion, or you can ask me, what videos should I go to find out different kinds of cams and what they do. I can show you those videos, but ultimately you get to choose that. And it's the same thing with this thing. I can see why guys would choose runner length. I could see why guys would choose an air-to-water intercooler. Here's why I would pick an air-to-water intercooler on a roots blower. For me, the roots blower, and this is why sometimes it's the excuse that people use. They use the same excuse for their cam timing on these roots supercharged combinations, but a positive displacement blower, whether it's a roots blower or twin screw, they provide immediate boost response because they have a fixed volume, and for every revolution they provide some amount of airflow. And if the blower is big enough versus the airflow needs of the motor, it provides immediate boost. As soon as you nail the throttle, chances are at wide open throttle, you're going to have boost. The nice thing about that is you have immediate torque production offered by these types of positive displacement superchargers. So on a roots blower, if you nail the throttle at 2,000 RPM, you're going to probably, if you sized it properly relative to the NA power output, you're probably going to have good boost response. Good boost response means we're going to have some torque production. Now, we won't have the same amount of torque production if we have a short runner manifold as we do if we have a long runner manifold. Those two things we've shown many, many times. Short runner manifolds lose power down low. And when I say down low, it might all be all the way to 6,000 or 6,500 RPM compared to a long runner manifold. Let's just say an optimized runner length. So that's a real thing. But there are other things to think about. If we're running on pump gas, I normally run optimized timing for all this stuff. So if we're running on pump gas, can I run that out on the street? Maybe, maybe not. With an intercooler, it'd be much more likely that I can run that, or run, even if not, I can't run all of it, that I can run more of it with an air-to-water intercooler and a short runner manifold. And it might be that with the roots blower and the intercooler and short runner manifold, that I'm making enough torque down there, enough to already spin the tires, where I have to modulate the throttle anyway, which is good. And so extra runner length would just mean that I could spin the tires more for a longer period of time. And the reason that I would pick the intercooler is because I think it would be better for most applications, especially with pump gas stuff. And a lot of guys don't have, we get that all the time. A lot of guys don't have E85. They don't run their stuff on race gas. They want the boost. They want the extra power. They want it on, for us in California, 91 or 93 elsewhere, or 98 RON in other countries. And so they want to be able to do that. And especially if that is a limitation, then having less torque from the runner length and not having the intercooler, I just don't think is as good a combination, especially down low, which is where you're going to be using most of this kind of positive displacement blower applications. I think down low, especially, and before the torque peak, I think that the combination is just going to be better on pump gas with an intercooler rather than have the runner length. Again, the ideal situation is to have both. But as this photo shows, and I'll show you guys a picture of that. As this picture shows, it's very difficult to package all of that. It's almost not possible. And then especially if you take into account hood clearance. So this has the runners, the blowers mounted underneath. This is our water crossover. This is the inlet for the throttle body, goes into the back. Our bypass valve. So it has some runner length going in. I think that this is a common plenum above the blower. So that's our blower situation. So I think that, and especially given this particular one, like I said, I don't think it doesn't have anywhere near the runner length of a PI intake manifold. And we know that a PI intake manifold makes pretty good power all the way up to 6,000 RPM. So when we start shortening it, as we've seen in all the tests that I've done on other kinds of manifolds compared to a PI intake manifold, we lose power down low. So that runner length is probably going to do that. That particular combination has runner length, and it does not have an intercooler. So in my opinion, when we first started talking about this, like, this is an easy bolt-on kit. It has runner length, it has a blower, it has lots of good things going for it. I just think that, I think it would be better. I think it might be better with an intercooler. So you guys let me know which one of those that you guys would rather have. For me, I think for street driving, the intercooler, I think, adds a safety margin. And then I know that I don't like saying it, but taking away some of that torque down low might also help, limit the detonation potential that could be there, I think. So let me know what you guys think. But this, like I said, it doesn't stop this kit from being very, very popular. Whenever I post things on it, when I did the original tests and did the original videos, there was a lot of response from it. People liked it. People wanted it. The 2-valve guys wanted it, which maybe for the manufacturers out there, maybe that's an opportunity for people to make some kind of, I'm hoping, inexpensive 2-valve blower kit. Because that's another thing, is 2-valve guys definitely are going to want to, and everybody wants it. Everybody wants an inexpensive kit. I do. Everybody does. Have you ever run a Howard's Rattler cam? I have not, but judging by the specs, I think somebody gave me the specs on that once. It should work well. Ranger, what's up? Just found your channel a couple of days ago. Pure Gems. Good. I'm glad. Thanks for enjoying it. I'm searching high and low for this supercharger for my Crown Vic. Yeah, if you find it, you're gonna have to find a used one. And I don't remember seeing any used ones. I haven't done an exhaustive search on it, but I don't remember seeing that particular blower available. Nitrous for the win. Yeah, nitrous helps. We ran nitrous. I think I ran nitrous with this blower. And then I did some throttle body tests on it. I also did some camshaft tests, because we ran a blower cam. I run a Rattler and a 351 Windsor. Sounds good and seems to make good power. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the specs are on the Ford one. People were asking, I thought about the Rattler cam on the LS stuff. I thought that the one that they were providing the information for. Australia's in the house. Upside down blower with intercooler on top and longer runners is the way. Way to size the blower would be great. Yeah, again, the problem with packaging runners and an intercooler and the blower is hood clearance. If you're trying to fit it under maybe there's room for a truck application where we tend to have more hood clearance, but a Mustang and a Camaro, those kinds of things, they have limited hood clearance. Kangaroos are roided up turbocharged squirrels. Mains in the house. A Vortex T-Trim Renegade brackets coming from my Fox body. T-Trim's a good blower. I like that blower. 350 when Windsor versus 5.3 swap is still being debated. Okay. T, you got a detail tonight? Okay. No carb. Don't think it would work with a stock EFI. Why is it turbo can run 30 to 40 pounds of boost and my big block Chevy can only run a max of 15 before being back in kit form? I don't understand what you mean. Why is your big block limited to 15 pounds? Is it not strong enough? 15 pounds on the big block usually is way into 4-digit power level. Hope the Vortex will work good for my 302, 11R heads, track heat intake manifold, stage 2 cam. That'll be good. The track heat will be the limiting thing in terms of RPM potential, but a Vortex with a rising boost curve will help that a bit. 99 to 2000 Lightning intake does show different torque peaks than the 2001, 2004. How much did they change it? They didn't have too much packaging room, right? Are you talking about a half an inch or 1 inch? Richard, I like the Edelbrock E-Force for Mustangs, F-150 Coyotes, 2300 with long runners, 14 inches. 14 inches is enough to make a difference, definitely. Where are you finding the cheap XLR blowers? The only place to find those is to go back like a year ago, and then you can find them then before I did the video on it. 3800 had similar packaging design limitations. Yeah, it's just the blower on top of a short runner manifold. An intercooler on the 3800 would have been nice, but they were able to make more power than the drivetrain would take anyway. So you want to build a PI, a dual runner or dual plenum intake? I did that already. I can show you some of the results of that. We did it as a cross ramp. I don't think we did it as a cross ramp. I think it was straight up and down with dual plenums, dual throttle bodies, and then we ran it connected and not connected with a bunch of different lengths and a bunch of different inlet sizes and stuff. Can't go wrong with an intercooler. Yeah, I recommend intercoolers for everything. I recommend intercoolers when guys are running 85. I recommend intercoolers on blow-through carbureted applications. I recommend intercoolers on guys running methanol, although the methanol guys tend to be drag racers and are more weight conscious than others. So that becomes a trade-off. My opinion is let the blower force air in and short runners and intercooling for top end. That's how the LT4 and the LT5, the factory GM stuff, the ZL1 motor. It's more important for making power runner length or high flow, big, short ports. The runner length dictates what RPM range the intake manifold is effective at. Short ports are going to make power at a much higher engine speed than longer ones. Water methanol on my B5 S4. Julius, what's up? How about a roots blower on top of a box style intercooler in place of the top plenum of a TPI and runners to lower intake like normal? Yeah, you could do that, but there's not a lot of room. If you look at a tune port underneath that plenum, there's not a lot of extra real estate there. That's why if you look at the Callaway, they put their intercoolers to the side, which I think is a terrible place for them, quite honestly. I'd rather have it be front mounted. Is putting an oil cooler on the turbo feed or return a thing? Yeah, you wouldn't put it on the return. You would put it on the feed. You want it on the pressure side. Did an injector swap at work today. Swapped 5,000 cc injectors for 5,200s. Nice. That's a lot. That looks like a 3.8 liter super coupe blower. Yeah, it's a 4.6 2 valve. Let's see. I'm scrolling back. Anyone else familiar with Rotophase long runner manifold for the early Hemi? You know, the company, it's from Ignitions. It really worked, allowing cylinder walls to split with net less. Oh, it was a nitromethane Hemi. Looks like the kit my buddy had 20 years ago was 4.6 liter Cougar. Used the Super Coupe M90, basically ran out of flow. Richard, would you take this non-intercooled M12 long runner setup or an intercooled M90 setup for a 4.62 valve? For doing what? Those two things would be different things that I would be trying to do. Don't think a T5 would take a blower. A T5 Mustang transmission? I had a blower on mine for 80,000 miles. The 471 has short runners. Still feels like 500 foot-pounds at 2,000. Out of a 471? New Zealand's in the house. I believe the intercooling improves the longevity of an engine. It certainly widens the tuning window a lot. The Vortec T-trim blower for my Fox body is an 87. Oh, Cougar, cool. So Shadow, you're reviewing LT's videos on the Turbo 8.1? Mark, I don't know what you mean by thoughts. Can I run an intercooler on my 671 with carbs and nitrous? Yes, you can. The Fox Body Mustang has an Edelbrock Victor 5.0 intake on top of a Victor Junior headed 331. I'm not too big a fan of that Edelbrock Victor 5.0 intake manifold, nor am I a fan of the Trick Flow, the TFS R intake manifold. I said it backwards, but the 01 Lightning has 5-inch runners and 1.5 to 2-inch runners. Okay. Be interesting to see how much that changes it. Hard to argue with the improved density of an intercooler. It is. It's it's better. It can make more power. It's certainly safer. You can run an intercooler between the blower and the manifold. Yeah, on roots blown stuff, that's done all the time, especially when you have, and you're running it on, if you're running on a cigarette boat, if you have an unlimited flow of cold water, that's fantastic. The Victor 5.0 intake has large short ports. Yeah, I've run that manifold a few times back in the day, and it's just a short runner intake manifold. Let's see. Mercedes has great setup and air to water, intercooler, and long runners all packaged between the valve covers. That's nice. OEMs can do stuff because then whatever hood clearance they need for their packaging, they can make that work. Are we watching 3800 series? How did you cover the injector holes when you swapped the NA manifold, or did you swap to NA heads too? We just plugged them with injectors. Do ultrasonic cleaners work cleaning injectors? Yeah, that we've cleaned them many times, and cleaning them sometimes makes them work and evens them out. Richard, I'm building a 408 LS stroker. Could you give me the recipe for your LS 408 that had 600 horsepower and 590 foot-pounds of torque? Yeah, all of the stuff is in the video that tells you. We had airflow research heads on it. We had a fast manifold on it. We had that Crane 240, 248 cam on it. So something like that. A Stage 4 Summit cam would probably also do that. And I don't think that one was a flat top. I think that was a 10cc dish. My Fox Body Cougar has all the Maximum Motorsports. They do. Maximum Motorsports does good work on stuff. Their chassis stuff is really good. Their suspension is really good. Have you ever tested a V3R J trim on a big block Chevy looking to make 1,000 horsepower on pump? Has air to water inline intercooler. 1,000 horsepower on a big block Chevy is very, very easy with the Vortec. It doesn't have to be a J trim. If that's I don't know what a V3R is anymore on a Vortec. We've done 1,000 horsepower stuff with a YSI, which is going to be smaller than that. So we know that blower will support it. We've done it with Mondos. We've done it with JT trims. So 1,000 horsepower is not that hard to do with, is just make sure your intercooler is big enough. What 408 LS build do you suggest for a three-quarter ton Silverado? You just got to tell me what kind of power you want to make, and is it a daily driver and that kind of stuff. Oh, Shadow Ops. Okay, I thought you were asking me something. Sean, I think you should build a rear mount turbo setup, long pipes with quite a few bends, and compare it to a standard dyno turbo to show the myth of boost lag. That video is already up. I've already run the remote turbo thing. And there is lag with it, but not a lot. Richard, I have an 05 Suburban, 6-liter. Want to put LS3 heads and boost in either a ZL1 blower or centrifugal blower. Which one do you think would be best for towing? Probably the roots blower would be better for towing. Just make sure that you have an intercooler on and that you're not trying to spin it really fast. The nice thing is if you're putting that on a 6-liter, like a canned 6-liter with LS3 heads, the boost should be lower than it is from the factory. What do you think of the 6.1 Hemi? Have you run them with boost? Yeah, many times. I have a book that I wrote on Hemi stuff. So yeah, we've done lots of testing with 6.1s for heavy vehicle, truck, and mountain driving. What would be an ideal peak torque RPM? It's not going to be where your cruise RPM is, but your peak torque RPM. And what motor are you talking about? Must be because that's an M112. I believe it has long runners, but it's not intercooled. You like intercooled, so asking, would you rather have the smaller M90? I would rather have a blower with an intercooler and short runners than a blower with long runners and no intercooler. But that's not the question there. The question now is how much power do you want to make? If I'm trying to make 400 horsepower or less or something like that, and I'm running low boost, then I'd rather have the smaller blower with an intercooler. But if I'm trying to make lots of power, then I would, if I'm going beyond the M90's power capability, then I would pick the bigger one. But I don't think that I would choose either one of those to make lots of power. My Fox does deserve to be back on the road. An electric AC compressor. Has anyone tried making an intercool using AC evaporator? Yes, they have. The factory, Dodge did that with their factory cars. Richard, what horsepower do you think the 408 LS with twin 7875s and trick flow 255 heads? The turbos are going to dictate how much power you can make, and two 7875s, if they're Gen 2s or 3s, can probably do near 2000. So then you just need to decide if everything else in your combination, including your drivetrain and stuff, is up to making that kind of power. William, I think that you won't see much of a difference between an engine 5/8 and an engine 3/4 headers on that combination, on your supercharged combination. I think with Mustangs, it's maybe more of a fitment thing. What are you going to put the 500 blower on, Fish? We had fuel pooling issues when we ran an intercooler core underneath a draw-through roots kit. I'd rather run just fuel than a carb intercooler setup. Freiberger, and I've run those before too. Freiberger ran his on that 871. They ran an intercooler and they also ran it with a tunnel ram. So they ran carburetors on top of it. They didn't run it fuel injected, and it works good. Thinking to run a Chopper cam on your LH6. Yeah, that cam will work for that. What horsepower can a Gen 3 6-liter block? An iron block we've run to near 1500. Has anyone swapped early small block 4 injectors for the 4-hole later injectors? What is the flow rating of the later injectors? Are they the same flow rating? If they are, then don't expect much. Rusty, happy to help. Can there be tuning video in the future? Would like to see different timings and air fuel ratios on the dyno. Well, all you need to do is go do a search for that. And I have lots of videos up already that do that, that show you the difference between like 4 different timing levels. And then from 10 to 1, 11 to 1, 12 to 1, 13 to 1 air fuel. Spoiler alert, the air fuel doesn't do very much. You have to be way off on air fuel for it to lose a bunch of power. But timing, you can lose a lot of power. Richard, will L92 with forged rods and pistons handle 18 pounds from a 2.9 Whipple? A stock one will handle that if you have ring gap. So yeah, you're fine. An 8N tractor. What is an 8N tractor? Is it a low horsepower kind of thing? Because the consensus is that little AMR 500 blower is like 120 horsepower, 150 horsepower blower kind of thing. 25 horsepower flathead 4-cylinder. Yeah, it'll make boost on that. Have you considered testing an Ellis head on a Windsor block? No, because there's so many good Windsor heads out there, and it takes a lot to make that work. It's not just putting the heads on. An Olds 455, and while towing, trying to determine an ideal peak torque RPM for designing a long runner intake manifold. So so that you know, those two things are two different things. The ideal peak torque RPM is different than a cruise RPM. Those won't be anywhere near the same. If you're cruising or if you're towing, most of the time you're cruising at part throttle. But while you're towing, then you might be up in higher engine speeds if you downshift to another gear. But you should look at your peak torque number being, it's on a 455, less than 4,000. So in the 3,500 range, probably. A buddy of mine did an M62 versus an M90 on Zell 28 240. The 62 made torque so fast, but the 90 made more power. Were they run with the same blower pulley or something? Can anybody help Tommy? He wants to do a 4L80E swap for the 4L60E. Can anybody tell him what's all required there? Scott's in the house. Yes, we're early tonight. Same boost. So is it the same boost or the same pulley? Because those are different things. Because if you spin them to make the same boost on the top, because those two blowers are not going to have the same boost curves. So if you either have to pulley them so that they both make the same boost number at, let's say, the horsepower peak, and then the boost curves are going to be different between the two because you're going to spin the smaller blower up faster to get it to make the same boost that the bigger blower makes at the top. So it will seem more responsive because you've spun it faster. If you spin both of those blowers at the same speed with the same pulley, the smaller blower does not make more power down low than the bigger blower does. It won't do that. How's our poll doing? 80, or it shouldn't do that. would you rather have an air-to-water intercooler instead of long runners on a roots blower? 86% are saying yes, they're intercooler people. I know, Scott, come on. You haven't been here. We've been talking about you. Is a methanol injection kit as efficient as an intercooler? No, it's pretty good at lowering temperatures, but it's not good at adding power. An intercooler does that, but water meth doesn't do that. Scott, you're interjecting amounts of knowledge and humor. It's a good combination. Okay, so now I think we're down to the bottom, right? Yep. So now I could switch over. We can go live. The video that I'm working on today is the 305. So I run 2 different 305s with different starting points, but they both got heads, cam, and intake manifold. They kind of ended up in the same spot, but they didn't start out the same. So your homework will be for me to help me figure out why. The oil galley is, you access the oil galley, that barbell, through the rear cover. I usually take out, there's a plug on the side. I usually take that plug out and then use it to I use an L-shaped hook, like the little orange ones that you get from Harbor Freight. And I just pop it out. I've seen guys drill it and put a bolt on or whatever, but I always put it back in because I don't ever get a super fancy, super Richie billet one. I just put the old one back in as long as the seals are good. $19.97 and up 4L80Es are best because they improved internal lubrication circuits. And don't the 4L80s, like 4L60s, have provisions for, they have inlets and outlets for transcoolers, right? What equipment do you use to measure back pressure? We just have a pressure sensor on the dyno. And what we do is I put a steel fitting. We drill it for a pipe fitting in the exhaust somewhere, and then screw in this fitting. And it's basically like a oil pressure fitting, but there's no sensor on it. It's just a hole. And we screw that in, that's steel. And then I have a piece of spiraled aluminum tubing, and with a cap on it and a flare fitting, and then we screw that onto the fitting that's in the exhaust manifold, the very hot exhaust manifold, and then that goes up and eventually goes to a rubber hose, which goes to our pressure sensor. And so that's how we monitor back pressure. Can we get some advice on broker header bolts? You can take a look at the video where Troy helped me out with, basically it was welding nuts onto them and then screwing them back out. Someone was a dope and didn't install a 9 keyway timing set properly. Those things are really, I hate all of those adjustable keyway things. And the reason that I don't like them is because 2 of the designations that they use, their circle or their oval and their rectangle, are way too much. They look way too much alike. They need to it needs to say 0 and advanced and like an A and an R. This is what they need to do. And that would make life a lot easier, but nobody does it. I think it's I don't know, are they still amortizing the tooling from the 50s and 60s when they made these things? I have an improved Racing Products barbell, and I will be dropping in once I have a CD HP 2800 installed again. Same with the rear main deal and cover gaskets. Richard, looking for a good oil pan for my stroker going in, and then a 4th gen F body. I don't know chassis specific pans because the stuff that I get from the wrecking yard always has truck pans on it, but Holly probably has stuff for that. Taskmaster, what are you leaving a link for? Is there a metal lifter tray to replace the cheap plastic ones? I don't think I would want to wear metal on metal. And since I have 320,000 miles on my truck, I'd say that the plastic trays work pretty well. I would get real GM ones and not the cheap ones. I was talking to Brian about this, and I didn't know this, but he said that there are some aftermarket ones. I don't know if it's from the tooling that they're using, but the opening, it has flats on it where the lifter slides in. So basically, some of the openings are bigger than others. The OEM ones that you get from GM, and they're still cheap directly from GM, you get those. If you push the lifter in, the lifter should be pretty snug going in. But I I don't think that I would want steel on steel there. I have no issue with the right factory lifter trays, especially when they last more than 300,000 miles. I don't know that I expect them to last forever. Remove 2 broken exhaust manifold bolts with left-handed bits. It's easy if they didn't work. Yeah, if they broke off inside the head, that gets a little bit harder. Then you got to drill it and heat it or easy out it, that kind of thing. But if there's some sticking out, usually you can weld a nut on there. And when you're welding that on there, you're heating up the aluminum too. Metal lifter trays would not work. They need to flex to grip the lifter. Yeah, they could do what GM has done in the past, like what they did in the small blocks, where they have the little dog bone thing. You could make that work, or you could use link bar ones. But that's not something I would worry about. If you get the right lifter tray, that's like running a hydraulic roller lifter. You just put it in there and set the lash, and it's all good after that. Well, not lash, set the preload. The last book I read was Phantom Toll Booth. It's just excellent. And I wouldn't put link bar lifters in any kind of street strip build anyways. How much back pressure do you say is too much? I don't say that there's a cutoff for too much. I just monitor it to see what it is. It depends on what you're trying to do. When we ran our Bonneville car, when I ran the Civic, we had less back pressure than boost pressure, but we weren't trying to spool the turbo up. We weren't trying to get the turbo spooled up until the very end. All we cared about was that we made lots of power, and not even lots of power, because we ran very little boost at Bonneville to make it go fast. So we had less back pressure than boost pressure, and you can get that by sizing the NA motor, its NA motor power output versus the turbo size that you use, particularly the hot side that you use, and then the exit coming out of the turbo and stuff. And so you can make all that happen. The turbo size versus the NA power output, and then the displacement also. We were running it on a 2-liter motor, and we were running like a 72 millimeter turbo, which is pretty good size. But normally what you see is at least 1-to-1, and 2-to-1 is not unusual at all. Phantom Toll Booth came up in a conversation with the dyno dude. Really? Somebody else besides me? Glenn, you want to lower the torque curve peak? You just need to enhance the torque production. Where are we at here? 87%. That's good. 13% on the long runner side. That's okay. I like long runners too. I'm very excited about testing the little blower, and also about running the LH6 motor with the DOD delete and a camshaft, and kind of see where it is. And if you want more torque, you could add like 3 or 4 pounds of boost too. That's always good. We do a transmission swap to a Turbo 400 or 4L80E overdrive. Checking the slip yoke engagement is a must. Also, you want to make the slip yoke, make sure the slip yoke doesn't bottom out. And the suspension is loaded hard. Yeah, you don't want it to. You don't want to hurt stuff. Just another 2 pounds. Yeah. For a towing application, I wouldn't be doing that. Like if I would put a positive displacement supercharger on my truck, which would be cool, and I had it at 7 pounds, I don't think I would ever go more than that, because there are things where I won't turn it up. The Omni, I probably will. On the LQ9 with a truck Norris cam, will 853 heads increase low mid-range torque, or will 706 heads work better? It's an 853 head an LT1 head or a LS1 head? I keep having to look that up, people. So that's like a 241 head. No, a 706 head is going to make more torque than more low speed torque than a 253 head or a 453. What is it? 853. Because it makes more than a 241 head. So if you look at the video I have up comparing the 706, the 241, the 799, and the 317 heads, you'll get your answer. You need to find a way to alert us. YouTube should already do that. Volts 455. One steep uphill starts has an issue of being able to get enough RPM for the torque to get the coach moving. Changing final drive helps. Stuck with a 3-speed automatic. Julius wants to know, anyone having experience with tuning air-cooled engines having an issue with air-fuel ratio on a carb 999 V-twin? Do they run hotter in the combustion chamber due to air cooling? What is the air fuel that you're running? Have you done testing on tri-way versus 4-1 headers on LS with a blower motor? I don't think I've done that specific test. I'm putting together a normally aspirated 408 LS. Is gapping rings enough for turbo impact? Anything else? Not really. Just put it on the low side of a turbo. So put it at like 28 or something. Baby Shark, I'm late, but I'm here. That's good. You got like 6 or 7 minutes left. Yeah, if you, Danny's suggesting, click the little bell beside his name on YouTube, click all, and it will be notify you of the videos. You remember, you have to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. So you get notified when I do all this testing. Too low of timing will make an AC engine run hot. Definitely make the exhaust temperature hot, right? Am I right? Am I right? Sharing is caring. We've got 2 more minutes. I'm gonna get rid of our poll at 87%. I like that. That's strong. $14-1 is what I'm chasing. It's a new learning curve for me. It's only a go-kart engine, but I need more experience tuning carbs. Just throw lots of jet at it right now if you can. Why would you want to blow hot air into an engine? It gets better fuel mileage if you do that. Oh, 14 to 1. Yes, for yes, definitely for idle. And cruise, you could cruise at 14 to 1. Buy a custom built turbo 400 torque converter made for the heavy motorhome. No garbage, like a custom built cone racing converter. So can you get a switch pitch torque converter? Check that link. I don't see a link anywhere. I don't think it lets you put links up. But I'm familiar with the runner length change on the Lightning. I've seen that because Kenny Bell. I've done lots of tests with the guys from Kenny Bell who did blower upgrades on the Lightnings, on all the years Lightnings. But my question is there on a motor that's a 6,000 RPM motor or less, the difference between a 2-inch runner and a 5-inch runner? I wonder if those are in the range of making a difference in that RPM range. Oh, they don't make the switch pitch? I remember way back, the guys from Hot Rod or Carcraft were working with whoever had that they put a switch pitch converter in because they were trying to get 25 miles per gallon. I remember from some kind of car, like an El Camino or a Chevelle or something like that. And they were putting together a small block Chevy specifically to try to get this kind of fuel mileage. So they were doing, I think that, and I don't think that they did it with an overdrive trans, which they should have. I think they did it with a turbo 350 or 400 with this converter, and then like a 308 gear or maybe a 273 or something. And then they were trying to make the motor run efficiently at low RPMs and all that stuff. They did, ended 20 years ago on aftermarket switch pitch turbo 400. 75 Monza with a 262, 29.6 miles per gallon. That's an actual thing that happened. Lots of misinformation on switch pitch. It was to allow faster idle at stoplights, not a torque increase. Cool. Working on a 75 V8 Monza right now. 229 gear. Nice. That's why they're so popular at Bonneville, which they are. Because the 229 gear, is that like a 7.5 rear end or something that's in that? And on that note, it is time to go, but I will be back tomorrow, and I'm going to try to get the 305 video up tonight or schedule it for very, very early tomorrow morning. But thank you guys all for showing up. I'll see you all tomorrow.